So what is going on? This is your old pal CHH. Come on in and have a seat. This is a good old discussion video. And the topic today is about action movies in 4K. You know, I've been asked on some instances about this, and I thought this would be a great opportunity to break this down from my perspective and really open a line of dialogue. Because one of the things I love doing on my channel is giving my opinion on a subject and getting feedback from you, and also recommendations, because one of the things we love as physical media collectors is finding new titles that we can add to our collections based off of other people's opinions. So we're going to talk about this in a broad sense, and I'm going to give you some examples of things on the action genre that I think benefit from 4K and also have no benefit. Not necessarily have a negative effect, but in my opinion, have no benefit. Now, when it comes to this, you could ask yourself, what about other genres above action? And here's what I will say. And again, this is my subjective opinion on this, but horror is probably the most visually driven genre. So if you're going to ask me, do horror movies belong on 4K? I would say in a blanket statement, that obviously there's some nuance to it, but I think blanket statement, my answer is yes. Like, yeah, horror movies belong on 4K for the most part. And, I mean, it just goes to show the desire for the horror genre in 4K when you have companies like Vinegar Syndrome who go out of their way and grab low-budget cult titles that are far from, you know, mainstream to put out on 4K, and people eat it up. Now, obviously, there's other things with that, you know, like slipcovers and packaging and things like that. But for somebody like me that, and most of you watching this video, probably, I'm sure, that really watch the movies, you know, a lot of times horror movies are so visual. That's why I think we go nuts when we see, being able to see Nightmare on Elm Street on 4K, because it's like, to be able to see more depth in the image of seeing Freddy running down the, you know, the driveway at night and seeing his silhouette and seeing a little bit more of the flesh detail on his makeup, we go nuts for that kind of stuff. And with action, it's a little bit more interesting. Now, I will say this. I think in a genre like comedy, it's like the least prone to being beneficial from super high definition. Like, I love comedy, you know, and there's some stuff I do want to have on 4K of movies I really love, like, obviously, like National Lampoon's Vacation, which is one of my favorite, probably my favorite comedy. And there's movies I really, really like, I'll be honest with you, like, I love The Great Outdoors with Dan Aykroyd and John Candy. I can't say I'm beating the door down for that on 4K. Now, if it comes out, would I get it? Probably so. But my point is, I watch those movies to laugh, right? They're not really movies that are so visually driven. With action, it's interesting, you know, and I want to give you some examples of this. Now, a lot of times, I have had great experiences with 4K action stuff, and I think this can kind of go with any subgenre. A lot of the stuff that was older, shot on film, can obviously benefit. I think most of us buy stuff on 4K that's older titles, stuff that was shot on 35, stuff that was shot on 16. And the digital stuff, whether it's shot on digital, I'm learning that there's a process that's kind of done today and was kind of done in the 2000s especially, which is shooting on film but editing on digital, which kind of still, in my opinion, makes everything look digital. Sometimes that can be a factor in that sort of stuff. But let's get started, guys. I'm going to give you some examples of movies that I think benefit from 4K, and other stuff that I don't think benefited much from my estimation. Now, this is kind of a hard one to admit, but I'm just being dead honest about this. Now, I have this movie on Blu-ray from Scream Factory, and it was actually Shout Factory, pardon me, and it's my favorite William Friedkin movie, and that's To Live and Die in L.A. Now, I love this, and I'm not saying that this is necessarily a bad 4K. I just think that this is a case of, you know, a full 1080p on this movie was good enough. Now, To Live in LA is definitely a it's a visual movie, but not so much in the way that I think it's something I would say, oh, I gotta see that in 4K. I kind of regret buying this a little bit. I think I got it because I genuinely love the movie, but watching it, I kind of said to myself, you know what? It's not that it's not a good 4K. I think Kino does a sensational job, but it's not a movie that I really think was necessary for a 4K because I don't know how much more it enhances the experience. It's just a damn good. I love the movie. It's my favorite William Friedkin film. So that's something I would say if you could get a Blu-ray of, which I think you may be able to, but it's not the Shout Factory one, which was a good release. That's the one I had. But I think if you want to just get a cheap version of it, I think there's probably just a studio Blu-ray of it that you can get. But I mean, if you don't have it at all and you can get this at a good price, get it because it's a damn good movie. But that's besides my point. Another one, and this is one, it was a hard realization to have, but these are movies that did not benefit from 4K. Now, this could be because maybe the digital look of everything, but besides a level of sharpness that was added, I gotta say, as much as it hurts me being a Stallone fanatic, I don't think the Expendables movies were a life-changing experience on 4K. I just don't. It sucks because and again, I don't know if this is a case of movies that were shot on film and then edited digitally, or what. I don't know if they were shot digitally and edited. I don't know, but besides just another level of sharpness, it's not, and it wasn't an experience that really added too much cinematic nature. They still just looked like, it really just, they still had the same kind of look of like the Blu-rays to me. Flat images, just a little bit more detailed. So this was something I would honestly not recommend that much. I would say Blu-rays or DVDs honestly are fine for this, which isn't a negative per se, because I love these movies. Besides, I like 1 a lot. I like 2 the most. 3's okay, just aimless, and 4 is not as bad as I thought it was going to be, because I heard it was really bad. But my point is, these are movies that are, bombastic. They're fun, but the way the era that they came out, I just don't think is that beneficial to 4K. That's my opinion. I watched these movies on a big 70-inch TV, and I think Blu-ray is fine for some of that stuff, which could be an argument really for just more modern stuff rather than the action genre, so to speak, right? But there are some things that I love on 4K. We'll get into that right now. And again, this goes more into, is it more so the era than the genre? And which is kind of what this is all about, because it really can't be that black and white of an answer, right? But I'll tell you this is a movie on 4K I love, and it really enhanced the experience for me, and that is Death Wish. Now, if for those of you that may have heard of these movies, Death Wish 2 and 3 are great. They're more intense and gory and bloody than any horror movie you've ever seen. So bad. They kind of embarrass horror movies with how insane they are. But Death Wish is a good movie. This is the one that's actually a movie, and it's got a lot to say. Death Wish has a lot to say, guys. So this is so I had an old Paramount Blu-ray of this, just a studio Blu-ray of this, and I'll tell you, man, the 4K of this, I got this kind of begrudgingly a little bit, just because I was like, well, I've got really nice releases for the sequels. I don't feel like I have anything prestigious for part 1. I begrudgingly got this, but this is a situation of, a movie from the 70s being seen in complete uncompression and so cinematic. There's a cinematic nature to this on 4K that, to me, totally enhances the viewing experience compared to the old studio stuff. But this, again, is it the genre, or is it, film? Is it 35? Is it a movie from the 70s? Which I think 70s is probably the best decade, in a sense, really, for a lot of genres. Maybe not action, but this is like a kind of a mixed genre, right? It's kind of a drama and action film. But yeah, this is something I would say, hey, if you want to get some stuff that's action oriented on 4K, I'd direct people to Death Wish every day of the week without hesitation. And now we talked about this being not a great experience for me on 4K, but on the flip side, I want to give you something modern that, to me, it was like, okay, this was amazing. And I totally feel this way because of the visual drive of this movie, which was insane, and that was, sorry Stallone, the better version, although I love yours, the Dredd movie on 4K. This was sensational. So we had this on Blu-ray when it came out. I think my wife got it when the movie came out because she was a fan of this. She's not big into superhero movies, but Dredd she liked. And so when we got this on 4K, I wasn't really expecting much, but obviously Dredd is a hugely visual-driven movie. And this actually was a big enhancement and something that I really enjoyed watching. So it's not always just era. Sometimes, like I said, one of the things that factors in for me is the visual drive of the movie. Is it a movie that visually is something to set your sights on? Is there a lot of colors and things like that in it? And just a real cool, that sort of thing. So it's multifaceted sometimes, but this is an example of a modern movie which I think slaughtered on 4K, and one that I highly recommend. I really enjoyed this as well. Now here's some other stuff that, if I'm being honest, was totally fine on Blu-ray. Now, this is hard to admit, but I wanted to do this to show that I'm trying to be completely unbiased, because liking the movie should not be a factor in this whatsoever, in my opinion, which is maybe a weird thing to say, but it's the truth. So, and I love this release. So you might be shocked when I show this. I love this release. I went out of my way to own this release, but I'm just being honest. The same way I would with some other horror movies. But like the Vinegar Syndrome Roadhouse. Now this release is insane. I love it. This is physical media, so I love this. But I honestly think the Shout Factory Blu-ray, picture quality-wise, is good enough. Roadhouse is a very much just an entertaining movie. Visually, it's very, I wouldn't say bleak by any stretch, but it's mostly, Patrick Swayze living in a farmhouse and then living in and then working in the dingy bars. It's very much a movie that's more of just like pure entertainment rather than visually stimulating, so to speak. Now, does that mean that it's not an enhanced picture with, obviously the way that Vinegar Syndrome succeeds hugely in their restorations? Yeah, on every technical aspect, forget about it. It's different. My point is the enhancement, the juice is not necessarily worth the squeeze to me in the enhancement of how much better the picture quality is. But that has more so to do with the visual style of the movie as opposed to the restoration work. It's not like it's a bad 4K. Hard to admit, I know, but that's just how I feel. So I'm trying to be unbiased about this. And a couple more instances of stuff that was good on 4K. This right here, a very visually stimulating movie, Mad Max. And you could definitely add, Mad Max Road Warrior into this, which most people, that's their favorite. My favorite is Mad Max, the first one, and this was put up by Kino. This is another movie. It's shot outdoors. It's very visually driven, and this was from the late 70s, so it's so cinematic. Now I have this from Scream Factory, and that is not a bad release. It might even still be available, that Scream Factory Blu-ray, if you want to get that really cheap. It's not a bad release at all, but this was something I was like, wow, this belongs on 4K. This is an inherently cinematically made visual movie. So this was something I really enjoyed, very, very much so. And other stuff too, there's others, like this is, and I don't want to pick on Vinegar Syndrome because obviously I'm showing stuff that they've put out on 4K that to me was just like, oh, but here's something I would go to bat for big time. And this release I love, I highly recommend it. That's Invasion USA. This kicked ass on 4K. This was an upgrade for me. I did have this from Scream Factory, believe it or not Shout Factory. This was put out by Scream Factory. It's an action film. But this has more explosions, bombs, and it takes place in malls and things like that. And to me, this is a very visually driven movie. And it's no surprise, this was directed by Joe Zito, who did Friday the 13th Part 4. So this is an example of an action film from Vinegar Syndrome that I think slaughtered, just kills on 4K, right? Just a great cinematic experience, a very big enhancement to me. I think this just obliterates that release. And some other stuff too, like one of the best releases this year, I think it was this year. I'm pretty sure this came out this year. I have to look at the date. Let's see, just to make sure. No, this was last year, apparently. I think we might have got it early this year. My point is, when Arrow Video did The Warriors, this is such a great cinematic experience as well that I thought was just really good. And I don't know what kind of releases they had before this, if it was just studio releases and things like that. And this is another, I got to pick on Vinegar Syndrome again, but this could come as no surprise because some of their titles people will say, well, they're just putting stuff out on 4K because that's what they do. Loved the movie, and the 4K was good, but Navy SEALs was a movie that was not as visually driven as I thought it would have been. I mean, it really wasn't. So this is something, release-wise, I love it. Don't get me wrong, and I don't have any regrets buying it or even watching on 4K. But this is a movie, if they would have done a cheaper, if I had seen the movie, that is, already, and they did VSUs where they had Blu-ray options, the way Arrow Video does Blu-ray options with their stuff, like you could have got this as a Blu-ray set too with the scan as well. I would have done that for this and save a little bit of money to have it on Blu-ray, because like I said, it's a good movie. I like it. It's kind of like a poor man's Top Gun. But this movie was not visually driven as much as I thought it would have been. It's very much, it just wasn't. It just wasn't. It's not, it wasn't what I was expecting, but I liked it. It's like I said, it's a good movie. It's not a great movie. But that's really the crux of this whole thing. It's really not so much a yes or no answer, a very much a straight ahead answer. There's factors to it. I think being shot on film, absolutely. But also, what's the movie about? Where does it take place? Where is it shot at? Is it shot outdoors? That's a big thing. To me, outdoors always looks insane on 4K, especially shot on film stuff. And is it a movie that visually ramps up stuff for the audience to just be impressed by? Like, is there a bunch of explosions? Because fire looks insane. Fire looks incredible on 4K. Don't ask me why, but it just does. I always love it when I see explosions on 4K because it looks so good. And there's many examples that we could talk about. And one of the things I want to do with this is obviously ask you, the audience, what action films you've gotten that you've been super impressed by on 4K, and other stuff that maybe you have not been impressed by on 4K. That's the whole point of this. That was the whole crux of this, to get this kind of dialogue started and hopefully put bugs in the ears of some companies of stuff that hasn't come out yet that would probably do really well. So there we have it, guys. The answer is kind of like it can, but it depends, just like any other genre. But it's a little bit more nuanced with this rather than horror, because I think horror is the most visually driven genre of all time. So there you have it, guys. Let me know your thoughts on this whole thing. This is your old pal CHH. Take care, guys. I'll see y'all next time. Huge giant thank you to all of my Patreon supporters. Without you guys, this would not be possible. To get behind the scenes photos, videos, music, private live streams, and much more, you can subscribe to my Patreon for as little as $1 a month. Thank you to my patrons.